Hello and welcome back. Now this is starting to look pretty good. We have treasure pickups and we'd like to spawn them as soon as we break a pot. We'd like to see a treasure pop up right there in the middle where that pot used to be. Now we're going to first do it from blueprints, but this is a core gameplay mechanic, so it's going to be implemented ultimately in C++. Now let's go into BP Breakable. Now we're not using these three nodes. I'm going to go ahead and remove them, get those out of the way. And here's our event get hit. And remember, this is from a Blueprint native event from our interface. Again, that's what this blue icon means. So this is an interface Blueprint native event, and we have functionality in blueprints, and we're going to have functionality in C++, and this gets executed when we actually hit the pot with our weapon, and so that's going to be when we'd like to spawn some treasure. And being a core gameplay mechanic, we'll do this in the native C++ version. But before we do that, let's learn how we can spawn actors from our blueprint. So I'm going to drag off of the place sound at location node and search for spawn actor from class. And here it is. And the node says spawn actor none, but really that's because we haven't set the class that we'd like to spawn. And we can set that from the dropdown here. So we can search for the class we'd like to spawn. That's going to be BP treasure. So we can select that, and this function takes an input called spawn transform. That means we need to set the transform, the location, the rotation, and the scale for the actor we're going to spawn. Now we can easily get the transform for this particular actor that we're in, this breakable, by right-clicking and searching for get actor transform. So get actor transform is a lot like get actor location and get actor rotation. The only difference is it gets a transform. Now if we hook that in, we can just see what that looks like when we spawn a treasure in this event here. Now the collision handling override is there for us to specify how to handle collisions when we're spawning, as spawning an actor dynamically can result in some collisions. Now, there are multiple options here. We can choose always spawn ignore collisions, and we'll always get that actor spawning even if it's colliding with something, which is possible. We are spawning this inside of a pot after all. Now, we can try to adjust the location but always spawn. That means if there is a collision, then the location will be adjusted so that there won't be a collision. And try to adjust location, don't spawn if still colliding, means that even if the location is adjusted, but it's still colliding with something, then we won't spawn. And then of course, do not spawn means don't spawn if there is a collision at all. I'm going to choose always spawn, ignore collisions, as we don't really have anything that should be colliding in our treasure. In fact, we can make sure of that by going to our item mesh in our treasure blueprint and going to the collision settings and open those up. And we do see that it's set to block all dynamic, but for treasure, we can make sure that this is set to no collision, as the mesh really shouldn't be colliding with anything. So we can do that either from C++ or from the blueprint. I'd like to do it from C++, but for now, I'm going to set the collision presets to custom and choose collision enabled, no collision. And we'll remember to set that in C++ when we dive back into the C++ side. So anyway, we have our spawn actor node here. We're spawning a treasure. Let's see what that looks like when we break a pot. So I'll grab a weapon and swing it. And there it is. There's our treasure. And it's kind of low. So we can adjust that spawn transform. But if I overlap with it, then I hear the sound and the treasure goes away. So we've picked up our treasure. So we can just kind of experiment with this transform and see how we can move it until it's at the height that we want. Now I'd like to move it up by a little bit. So I'm going to hold Alt and left click to break that pin and right click on the return value to split the struct pin. And now we see the three components to the transform. And I can even do that again for the location. I can right click, split struct pin, and I have X, Y, and Z available. And I'd like to add to the Z. I'd like to take the Z, use an add node, and add about 75 to that location. but we can't just plug these in to spawn transform. What we could do is right-click and split that struct pin, and now we can plug in all of these parameters. We can even right-click on the transform input, split that, and we now have all of the different components individually, and we can plug them all in like that. But what I'd like to do instead, which might be a little cleaner, is I'm going to right-click, recombine that struct pin, right-click again, and recombine that struct pin, and I'm going to simply right-click and type Make Transform. And that allows me to make a transform, which I can simply plug in to spawn transform. And I can split the struct pin for the location, and then we can hook up all the applicable values here. So I want to keep the X and the Y, I'll plug those straight in, but the Z, I'm adding 75 to it, and I'm going to plug that result into location Z. And the rotation can go into rotation, scale can go into scale. It's going to be 1 anyway, but why not? We can hook it up. And now we have a transform with that Z location raised by 75 units. So let's see what that looks like. We'll go ahead and break it, and that looks great. All right, so we now know how to spawn actors. But before we jump into C++, I'd like to break an object and try to pick that treasure up right away. And we'll see that we're kind of blocked by some of this geometry until that actor gets destroyed. So that's something I'm going to keep in mind. When I break this pot, I'd like to at least have the pot's collision set to ignore my pawn. And just to remind you, if we go into our Blueprints Characters folder, open BP/character, and select the capsule component, here in the collision section, the collision object type is pawn. So we can easily set that geometry collection to ignore the pawn. All right, so we know what we want to do. Let's delete that spawn actor node and reconnect that pin, and we can remove those nodes. So we're ready to do this in C++, and we're going to handle that in the next video. I'll see you soon.